Carla, I think we're ready to go. The floor is yours.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Russ, and hello and welcome to FGDLA's Government Learning and Technology Symposium Series. I'm Carla Lane. I'm FGDLA's Vice President of Higher Education Sector, and I'm the moderator for today's webinar. And I'm here alongside Russ Colbert, who is FGDLA Vice President of the Corporate Sector. FGDLA is a nonprofit professional association formed to promote the development and the application of distance learning in the federal government. We actively foster collaboration and understanding among those involved in leveraging technology and instructional media in support of the education and the training needs of the federal government. Our membership is derived primarily from individuals employed by the agencies within the federal government. We invite you to join with us in this exciting field. You'll find membership forms at fgdla.us. And here are some of the upcoming events. On December 4th, we'll have the presentation of the FGDLA Awards that recognize excellence and quality in training. On December 11th, Learn to Win's John DeFonso and Andrew Powell will discuss the platform's impact on the DoD. On January 15th and February 19th, Dr. Anders Gronstadt will present a 4-hour workshop on instructional design and production for virtual reality. On March 19th, we'll hold the FGDLA annual membership meeting. And on April 16th, Dr. Zach Rochelle will address using direct explicit instruction for instructional design. We hope you'll join us for these special and online events. If you have suggestions about future topics, please let me know. We're always really interested and we try to accommodate any ideas. So we are so proud that Zoom, Moodle, and COSO Cloud have become such valued sponsors to FGDLA. They have been instrumental in helping us present the webinars and so much more. We're so happy to announce that Learn to Win just became a new FGDLA sponsor. Learn to Win is a leading provider of personalized, predictive, and secure enterprise training software. By leveraging artificial intelligence, data science, and a modern cloud-native platform, Learn to Win will transform how organizations train their teams to drive winning outcomes in complex environments. It serves 75 enterprise customers. Russ, would you like to add anything to that?
Carla, you're a hard act to follow, but I echo your comments and I thank our sponsors, but I especially thank our newest sponsor, Learn to Win. I thank John DeFonso and Learn to Win and joining us and supporting us. We thank them very much.
We do. We're so happy to have them. I think they're really the best. Thank you, and we do think that they are the best. We've worked with many of these companies for years, and it's really a privilege to have them as our sponsors. Today's webinar will address webinar program management elements that bring learners back time and again. The Defense Acquisition University provides webinars on how to develop and deliver engaging content to webinars. The program office supports the team with marketing, production support, and analytics. The DAU has grown their webinar program from a once-a-month lunch to learn to supporting over 500 events in fiscal 24 with over 139,000 attendees.
Wow.
That's really something. Your guide to the webinar is DAU's Brenda Sedlacek. Brenda is the Center Director of the User Experience Directorate of the DAU. Joining her as a panelist is FGDLA Vice President of the Government Sector, Dr. Judith Bayless. She is a requirements strategist and the Chief Education Advisor to DAU. Brenda and Judith, it's such a pleasure to have you here. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that, Carla. And that was a very kind introduction. I've had the pleasure of learning from your webinars in the past, so it's nice to be able to give back to the community today by sharing some of our best practices. And I look forward to you guys chiming in since you have such a successful web event series.
If you're really good at this, Brenda, I can see you taking over my position. So you just do a really good job today.
I will, Russ. I'll tell you, that sounds like I may need a job in the future sometime. So I'll keep that in mind.
Thank you.
You know, first before Carla gave us a little bit of an example, but before that, I'd like to get a sense from our attendees, if you guys have webinar programs in your agency. So if you want to use the chat, I would love to see if you want to put in the chat your agency and yes, no, whether there are folks out there who have webinar programs similar to the one we have here. And so I'll give that a second to see if there's any chat in there.
Yeah, just
And
make
I don't
sure
know if you guys,
the chat is set so it's going to everyone and not just the host or the panelist.
I think
There you
that's
go.
fine. So higher ed, yes, webinar programming, excellent. I see that from Stephanie. Are there others out there? So I'm going to try and address two things. One is if there's programs, because we lead a program, but also we share best practices around if you're just leading a single event as well. So I hope that we'll be able to meet both needs, whether you have a program or whether you're just going back. Now, Carla gave us in CDSE, yes, also DOD, excellent. And Marine Corps University, yes, we have regular webinars. All right, so there are a few folks that have full programs as well. Well, I want to share a little bit more of an overview, and Carla mentioned this as well. We used to just have a once a month webinar. It was pretty low key. And then I'd say it was probably about after pandemic hit, we started doing more intensive ones. And let me back up a little bit and give you just a background of what DAU is. I see we have some DoD people in the audience, but the Defense Acquisition University, DAU, trains the 150,000 members of the defense acquisition workforce. So these are the people who build or buy anything for the DoD. So it could be anything from uniforms to aircraft carriers. And primarily we do that through courses, whether those are instructor-led courses or online courses. And we have other types of learning assets, which can be found on our website. To support that mission, DAU has 5 regional campuses across the United States. And we have 2 colleges, the College of Contract Management and the Defense Systems Management College. So we've got quite a large audience that we really target with our web events. And our current web event program, as I said, grew from that once a month to what it is today. And, 139,000 attendees in FY24, over 500 events. And I attribute a lot of that growth to our transformation during the pandemic, where our faculty became a lot more comfortable with technology like Teams and Zoom. We use Microsoft Teams. And I think they realized how powerful and fast this means was to get learning out to our workforce, especially as compared to a course. So the time it takes to develop a new course, if we have new content that we're trying to get out to the workforce, we can put on a webinar in weeks. To develop a new course, and Judith would know better than I do, how long does it take, Judith, for us to develop a new course on average, would you say?
Depending on the nature of the course, we're anywhere from 6 months to a year.
6 months to a year. So if you can imagine, I can get something out the door within weeks versus waiting 6 months to a year. So it's really a powerful medium, and our faculty have really, taken off on the idea. Now, to give you an example, here is just a snapshot of our event calendar from our website last week. So as you can see, if I'm looking at it here, we had on the 5th, it looks like there were, I don't know, 3 or 4 events on that Tuesday. And then there were 3 events on Wednesday. There was also an event on Tuesday and at least one on Thursday as well. Sometimes they actually overlap one another because remember, our audience could be anything from a logistician to a contracting person, and perhaps the audience is completely different. So we actually do have some that overlap one another. I try and always encourage people, hey, take a look at the calendar and make sure we're not competing with ourselves if it's a very broad topic. So, the other thing to take note of on this, you can see that we have a series column. Many of our events are series that they repeat the same thing or the same topic anyway, on a weekly or monthly basis. And a lot of those we refer to as office hours. Sometimes there's not even an agenda for the office hours. It's an opportunity for people to come in and ask questions. And these events are very popular with our audience. So you can look and see we have several different series that go on. We do offer one-off events that is just on a single topic, but we have a lot of repeating topics in these series. Let's see. Okay, so that's given you kind of the scope of the program and the size of it, right? So now I'd like to share with you how the program team supports the events. So my team is completely in a supporting role. We don't plan the events. So that's the role of our subject matter experts, our teaching faculty. So they're the ones who are the closest to what the workforce needs, because they're the expert, whether it's in logistics, the experts in contracting, the experts in auditing. And so they know those topics, and they're the ones who decide what is best for each of the web events or the series. So what we do on my team is manage the process. We do producer training and a certification for producers, which I'll share with you in a moment. We do the analytics support, communication, and also best practices. Right now, we have a certification for our producers, which I'm going to talk about next. And we're talking about doing one for organizers as well. So those people who have a new idea and they want to say, oh, I want to offer an event to really kind of teach them, well, this is the things that you'll have to do. This is how the process works. And we're thinking of doing a certification for our organizers as well. So the first and foremost, we have a fantastic team of producers. And to become a producer, you have to complete a web event producer credential. So that's training that we developed in-house. It consists of 3 courses and culminates with a shadowing and mentoring capstone. That's where the producer first serves in a backup role, and then they lead an event with a senior producer serving in that backup role, giving them a chance to really grow in confidence and ability throughout the capstone time. And they can repeat that as many times as they want. If they don't feel comfortable after the first couple times, they can stay in that role, having a senior person backing them up until they're ready to lead an event on their own. Now, we have clearly defined roles and responsibilities for before, during, and after the event for each of these roles. So this is just an example. I don't expect you to read all this. This is more of a graphic to show how we represent. And this is the producer one, which really has the most content. But we divide it up by what needs to be done before the event, during the event, and then after the event. So as you can see, the producer work begins way before the date of the event. And the producer serves as, a partner to the organizer on getting the event organized, making sure we have the event title, the description, speaker bios, ensuring they have all the information they need to create a web page. Within our dau.edu website environment, each event is its own single web page, and it stays up there after the event as well. So they have to make sure that they have all the information that they need in order to create that web page. They also schedule a tech check in advance, and they work with the organizer on whether there's polls or any kind of planning, how the event will run. Is it going to be a panel discussion? Are we going to have Q&A? So all the organization aspects are controlled, and they decide all that in advance. Then during the event, they usually do the announcements at the beginning, very similar to how we heard Carla and Russ at the beginning. They'll do those announcements, share housekeeping things, also share the opening slides, begin the recording of the session. And then depending on how they've worked it with the organizer, frequently they monitor the chat and the Q&A. Now, one of the things as part of our program, which is really important for us, we're very much a data-driven organization, is we also have a survey that we ask all of our attendees to fill out at the end of the event. So the other thing that the producer does is they put that survey link in the chat, towards the end of the meeting. And you'll hear more about that, the analytics that we get from that survey at the end. Then after the event, their work continues. They download the attendee data. So in our Teams environment, and Zoom is probably similar, we download a spreadsheet which has all of the attendance. And these spreadsheets are what feed our analytics, which I'm going to show you a little bit afterwards. They also download the video. They look at the closed captioning. Now this technology is so fantastic with AI. The closed captioning is really very good on its own. But we are the Department of Defense. We have a ton of acronyms, right? So we have them go in and just take a look. Are the acronyms in there correctly? Or if we have maybe a high, the names. Are the names in there correctly? Because those are the things that sometimes our AI doesn't get correct. Also, if there's some dead space before or after, they cut that video and they look at that as well. And then once the video is polished and complete, they upload it to our video media server. And then they have to find the URL from the video media server, and they put that in another location where we keep all the data. And then they go back to that web page, which they created at the beginning, and they replace the join button with the take survey button. So people can come and watch the video at a later time. They put the video link on that web page. So now that web page can live on with the video, the survey, and all the information about the speakers. The other thing is some of our speakers will provide the slides, and some of them will also provide maybe a leave behind document that they want to share. All those other collateral can also be uploaded to the web page. So our producers do all of that kind of information. Now I mentioned one survey, the survey that we ask our audience to take. We actually have a second survey as well. And that survey is sent to the organizer of the event and any of the speakers or panelists. So it's a nice little email. It says something like, you know, it's been a pleasure working with you. We'd love to hear about how the process went for you in organizing the event. And we welcome your perspectives. And here are some details. They'll send the link to the page, the link to the video, the link to the survey for the attendees, as well as information about the event, like perhaps, you know, you had 255 attendees today. Here were some of the Q&A from the chat segment, and they send that. And then we get feedback from them to see how our team is doing. So we're very much data-driven on the team. So that kind of shows you the producer perspective, but also the roles. And we have roles like this that identify, you know, what the process is for each of those roles. Next, communication and collaboration is so important, and our team is just amazing in that we have this, and we use Microsoft Teams, so we have a Teams chat, and that Teams chat we call the Producer Clubhouse. All of the producers are in there, and they are so fantastic the way they support one another. I can tell you, I have seen times where there is a live web event going on, and somebody says, a producer reaches out and says, we're in an event right now and something strange is happening. Has anybody seen this before? We'll have another producer come in right away and say, yes, that happened to me yesterday. Here's how we fixed it. And here's what went wrong. They are solving problems before, and most of the time the audience doesn't even know that there was any type of glitch or anything like that, because the collaboration is so fantastic. And you know, I'm not in there all the time, but these guys are doing events day after day after day. So they know when they see things. And we were actually talking about it right before our meeting, Russ and I were, that this software, when we talk about Teams or we talk about Zoom, the way software works now is you are getting updates every week, and the software is changing, right?
And Russ? others, Brenda, like Adobe Connect and others, many others. So it's not just one or two, it's maybe 5 or 6 or 7 new platforms, which are incredibly amazing. And I have to tell you this, your program is amazing. You've got everything to be 1,000,000% successful. And it's very obvious to me, having done this both with a commercial company and with the military and with the federal government DLA, your program is exceptional.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. But I know I can learn more, and we are always trying to learn. And, but it can be challenging. And I think that's probably why it was hard first for faculty and for people to adjust to this technology. And even as we as trainers try and provide training for how to use the technology, you create a resource, and then the next thing you know, the button's in a different place, right? Because they're
Oh,
always
yeah,
updating it.
that's right.
It
And you're
is
looking for it,
amazing.
and you think about it, you've got all those eyes on you. They're all
Yeah.
looking at you, and the button's not in the right place. So it takes time to go looking for it. And those are what we used to call, these kind of things.
Yeah, I know. Well, and that's why it's so great, because these guys know that they can rely on one another. The other thing we usually do as well is we usually try and have a backup producer. So we have a lot of producers that are in training, which is helpful because now we can always put them in. And to have that backup person there. And also, you never know when somebody's going to call in sick or something like that. And then we already have a backup producer, and we ensure that they are in the meeting as an owner as well. So we learn that lesson, right? Where you have the meetings owned by somebody and that person can't start it and can't do any of the responsibilities, the admin responsibilities. So now we always try and have a backup in there. So if anything happens, there's someone who has that role and has those permissions.
Brenda, how many producers are there? So how many producers are there?
We probably have about, I would say 15 right now, 15 producers. And then we have maybe 4 or 5 what we call lead producers, who are the ones that serve as mentors. And then we have probably another 10 in training.
Okay. Do you consider them staff, or are they from different departments, or?
That's a great question, Carla. So the way we have it, I actually have 2 people who work for me directly, and all they do is they're producers. But we have the whole team is distributed. So each of the regions, we encourage them to have their own producers. We do all the training, we do all the mentoring and everything, but the bodies come from the regions. So we have I think West probably has like 5 or 6 producers. They have a very large team, and they really great support. But the thing is that we are an enterprise team. So even though we like to have people represent who they are closest to. But if there's an event that's coming up in another region, then we support them across the region. So it could be a producer from West supporting someone from CNE, which is our Capital National region here. So we could have Capital Northeast. People cross over. So you try and be local, but if you can't, we support the entire enterprise that way. But it is a distributed team. So 2 are mine, and the rest are from all across the enterprise.
But you do face-to-face and virtual?
Nope, they're all virtual.
Everything you do is virtual, okay.
Well, there's a few one-offs. For example, we have like a TEDx DAU where we come in. We have a couple of conference-like events. They're not very many, but all of our webinars are virtual like this.
Well, the efficiency of it, I mean, the cost saving, you're not getting on a plane, hotels per diem, all those things.
Yeah.
And you can spread it out over several days. So it really fits the adult education model, where a little bit at a time, you're able to digest it and process it and then build on that in the future days too. So
And Carla, we've learned a lot, I think, too. And Judith could probably speak to this better as well, where at first we thought, when we went almost completely virtual during the pandemic, and we tried to set it up as an 8-hour class, like we would have a face-to-face class. And we quickly learned that wasn't the way to go, right? And we morphed that to a few hours. Judith, do you have any comments on that?
Thank you for bringing up those nightmares. I thought I had finally left them behind me. Um, but I did a lot of yelling from the mountaintop of what I called lift and shift. Lift and shift does not work. You cannot take an 8-hour traditional classroom course and turn it into essentially an 8-hour webinar. But you know, we're all experiential learners of one kind or another. So many of our faculty needed to have some experiences for that lesson to sink in. And I think that Brenda and her team have really been able to capitalize and turn, you know, scar tissue into best practices, which is one of my favorite kinds of magic. She's done that. Her team have done that very well. I did want to chime in here though. I wanted to call attention to the bi-monthly advisory group meeting, and I wanted to ask you to share a few details about that, because that I think is one of the things about the formal processes that you lean on that allows that wide set, the diverse set of volunteers that you have to serve as producers, to really recognize that they have a lot of institutional support standing by them. And so I wanted to throw my own question out there about, would you please share a few more details about that?
Absolutely. So we also have so we have our bi-monthly advisory group meeting. And this is really, these are our business. We have groups in each of the regions that we call them business unit advisors. So they're meant to be, if someone's new to it, there's someone in their region that they can reach out to and say, hey, I want to offer a web event. What do I need to do? And can put them in touch with producers, can put them in touch with our office. And so those people are attending. A lot of them are also organizers of major series as well. I invite all of the organizers to the advisory group meeting, and we usually are talking strategic things, right? We're talking governance type issues. We're talking about more high level things. And then I'm also always, and there was a question in the chat that I saw as well about best practices for recruiting and retaining producers. I mean, the other thing is I share at those bi-monthly advisory group meetings what a great job the producers are doing. I'm always giving them kudos because they are just fantastic, and none of us could do our job without them. As compared to the monthly producer meeting, which are much more tactical. So the advisory group meeting is more strategic. How are we doing? I start out both of those meetings with data, and I'm going to show you my data in a little bit, but what are our goals? How are we moving towards those goals? Usually each of the regions have goals as well. So how are they working towards their goals? And then within the producer meetings, though, it's a lot more tactical. It's like, hey, did you see there's a new button in Teams? I've been having this issue. All of a sudden, something strange happened. And we talk about really in the nuts and bolts of doing things. Oh, the media product, their server has changed. Now we have to put tags, and now we change things differently. So that's really hands-on, nitty gritty in those producer meetings where we're just continuing to update the training. Things have changed. Oh, we need to fix things. But to go back to what Judith was saying, we really do have tremendous support across the enterprise, and we're also recruiting. So the ways that I've done this is a lot is I've shared the work that our producers have done. I've shared, we are very data driven, so I'll share, look at how many events your region did, and where did those producers come from? Maybe you have no producers in your region. So all this work was done by other producers across the region, which we want to support you, but we would really love for you to have your own producers. And so we've been fairly successful, and we have new producers coming online. And I also brief at our deans and directors meeting frequently as well to show the great work that's going on. And I don't know how many times I bang the drum, but we need more producers. We need more producers. So I do have to make that ask. And, you know, after time, it's one of those communication things, communicate. but I really, we're seeing that now. I think we have producers from every region now. All right, so I think that's it for this. I do want to share on the next slide one of the other ways that we communicate. And this is our information sheet that we share with each event. So the producer would share this sheet with their organizer, and we have a place where we save them. They're all saved in locations where this communication can take place asynchronously. And you can see that, and I'm going to go ahead and zoom in here so you can see a little better. And this is also where our communications team has helped us. So we're an institute full of PhDs, very smart people who are used to writing a lot more technically and not necessarily writing for media, writing for the website. And so our communications team has really done a great job in helping us. And we share this is kind of stuff that we share not only with our producers, but also with our organizers to say, hey guys, we need to be short. We need to keep it, really within 50 characters or less would be great. We need to have keywords so that if people are searching, they can find this content. And I really love how they said, think of this description as a summary of your movie trailer, right? This is different kind of writing than most of our faculty are used to. So we have great support from our comms team who are always working with us on, hey, it shouldn't look like a dissertation, right? It needs to look like something that's going to really pull you in and be engaging. And so this is an example of some of the kind of help that we get from our comms team, and we share this. And then this tool is used for the producer to collect all that information that they need to create that page on the website. But the comms team also uses that information for when they go out and they send, and we'll talk about that a little later, but they send out emails, they set up information events on LinkedIn as well for us, but they use all this great content, that needs to be a little bit sexy to be able to try and market the events as well.
So Brenda.
Yeah.
Do you ever encounter someone that's skeptical about your program? And if so, how do you handle that?
I handle it with data. That's how I handle it. And I'm going to show you some of our data a little bit later, Russ. And when you look at the numbers, and the other thing that we use is Net Promoter Score, and I'm going to show you that as well. And our people love it, and they come back again and again.
Wow.
And that's really how I demonstrate the value there.
You
And
should
we
have seen
also
us
have great support
in the Navy, because we did the same thing in the Navy, but without the data. It was at a time period when we just didn't have that. So all we could do is try and convince them to the best of our ability. And sometimes they didn't want to believe. And sometimes we had to use the chain of command, as Erica knows, in the Marine Corps. We had to come down and say, you are going to do it. And sometimes when you force instructors to do things that they don't like, their enthusiasm and their success rate goes in the wrong direction.
At Disneyland, what they say is this will be the happiest place on earth.
And so I have to be honest. So a couple of things from is one of the things that we measure is our learning hours. So that's one of the things that we measure at DAU. We measure course grads. We measure a lot of things. We're very data oriented. And so I think there was some pressure perhaps hey, we need to create, we need to compete. We need to be able to, and when you have a few people that are really outstanding and they're just going to town, and then I think probably, I'm being honest here, that there are others who go, hey, they're doing it. Why aren't we doing it? Right. So there is probably a little bit of competition there as well amongst the different groups. And then to get it to, definitely getting the faculty involved. And we kind of grew up grassroots it actually started, people saw this opportunity after this technology was just so fantastic. They saw this opportunity. There are a few leaders who just went out there and just were crushing it, right? And so then after a while, and I did see this a little bit with our Net Promoter Score, when we first had our initial group who were super motivated for web events, right? Super high scores. And then when we started, some people were perhaps being voluntold instead of volunteering. And I think as the scores went down a little bit, not much, our scores are still outstanding, but you could see that, the first people who were so motivated for it, they were just, kicking it, just killing it. But, we've tried to also learn from them and get best practice. We're a learning organization. We're always learning, what really worked for you guys? Why did that work? One of the other things we've done as well is we have brought in visiting faculty.
Oh,
So we now
yes.
have a cadre of visiting faculty from other higher ed institutions, and their main focus is web events. So they come on for a year, and then during that year, one of they're only working part-time, they're not full-time, so they still are with their main organization, but they have so many hours that they contribute to us, and their main work is doing web events. So that's how much support we have from our leadership team.
We in the Navy, Brenda, we did that tactic also. And I used Carla's former team leader. His name is Patrick Portway. Some of you will know that name because was a pillar in the industry for so many years, but we brought him in and used him in the Navy. And we also used Carla's textbook in the Navy. So, with supporting faculty to create enthusiasm and a great textbook, that gave us a real advantage.
Oh yeah, that sounds like a great strategy. Now, the other thing is we can get the faculty to participate, but there's a little bit of a carrot that we use to get attendees to participate as well. So I mentioned the survey feedback, and this feedback is really critical for us to understand if we're meeting the needs of the customers. That's the acquisition workforce. We consider them our customers. And we want to know ways that we can improve, as well as what other topics with all of the content that we're putting out there. You can see, up to 10 events in a week. Constantly, we need new content. So what are the acquisition workforce? What are our customers looking for? So one of the ways that we find that out, certainly our faculty are in classrooms with students on a regular basis and talking to students that way, and they're hearing what their needs are. But we also ask a question in the survey that says, what other topics would you like to see? And so that helps feed that. Now, I wanted to share with you, I mentioned that we offer one of the questions we do, which we judge, is called the Net Promoter Score. And one of the reasons that we do this, so it's a 0 to 10 question. And the question is, would you recommend this, in our case, event? Would you recommend this event to your customer or to your colleagues? And then, but the nice thing about the Net Promoter Score, and we use it a lot at DAU, is that it can be cross asset type, right? So you could say, would you recommend this course to your colleague? Would you recommend this video to your colleague? Would you recommend this article to your colleague? So it's a great question, and it really speaks to customer loyalty. And it's so funny because it's a hard concept to understand, because 9s and 10s are promoters. So if you can imagine, to be a promoter, that means you're going out. Oh my gosh, guys, I just attended the best event. You guys should definitely go check out a DAU web event. That's a promoter, right? They're like banging the drum. Nobody even had to ask them. So those are people who give you 9s and 10s. The people who give you, and we get feedback from faculty all the time, and they say, well, why isn't a 5, or a 6 is still good? But no, a 7 and an 8 are considered passive. That means if you ask them, they might say, well, it's okay, it was good. But they're not out there saying, you got to go. They're saying it was good. So that's a 7 and an 8. 0 through 6 are considered detractors. You ask them, they probably go, it's okay, right? That's not really a ringing endorsement. So this is one of the things that we've adopted. It's a measure that we use for our courses, we use it for our web events, we use it in a lot of places. Then as people get familiar with it, they start understanding the numbers and they realize what's a good number, what's a bad number. And you can actually go negative with this because you subtract the detractors from promoters. So if you have more detractors than you have promoters, you get into a negative score. So, but anyway, this is one of the ways that we measure, and it helps us compare our program to other programs that are at DAU, for example, courses and other types of assets.
How do you
So-
make the changes then when it's a bad score?
How do you make the what, Carla?
How do you make changes, revisions, improvements when the scores are bad? How do you use
well,
that?
I'm gonna get to that in a second, okay? Because I'm gonna show you that as our dashboard in a second. But I wanted to mention one other thing here. But that's a great question. I'll come back to it. So one of the ways that we, and I bet if I asked here, how many people like to fill out a survey? Nobody would raise their hand, right? I don't want to fill out a survey. So we try and get people to fill out the survey so we can have that information. Was it good? Was it bad? And so one of the ways that we do that is we offer them a certificate of attendance. And so the certificate of attendance you see there, you only get it if you submit the survey responses. So the certificate of attendance can be used for continuous learning points. So our acquisition workforce is a certified, you get certified to be a DAWIA certified to be in the workforce. So just like most credentials or certifications, there is an ongoing requirement for continuous learning. So we do have a little carrot that we can share with people. And it's they have an 80 hours within 2 years. So they need to earn 80 continuous learning hours within 2 years if they're certified to maintain their certification. So we do offer this a little bit as a carrot to say, we'll send you a certificate of attendance and you could submit it to earn continuous learning points. It doesn't guarantee it. They still have to submit it to the Army or the Navy or the Air Force to get it, but we do give them that certificate of attendance. So one, that gets us the data.
Folder then? I'm sorry, does that go into
Yes.
their HR folder?
If it gets approved, it would go into their HR folder, yes.
Good.
But those are managed by the services. We're working right now to see if there's a way that we could get this uploaded to their DAU transcript. So our learning management system is Cornerstone On Demand. And so we're working to see whether we could have their attendance within web events uploaded to their DAU transcript, which they can all access within Cornerstone On Demand. So then they could go to their transcript and it would show all of the events they've attended, and then they could just turn in one transcript to get request for their continuous learning points. All right, so I think that was it. Now I want to go back to Carla's question. So this is our dashboard. This is primarily the main web event dashboard. So this is the one that I show when I brief our deans and directors, our senior leadership. This is like an overall program dashboard. Now we have several, this is just one of like a dozen dashboards that we have for web events. And you have the capability to filter, this is for the program. And I want to show you the gauge right there, that's our net promoter score. So 56.7, which is really very good. It's here over here in the green area right now. And it is one of our higher rated assets. So if you look at some of our courses, some of them are not as high as this. So this is a very highly rated thing because people love it and they give us good scores. But you also can filter this down. If I offered, to Carla's point, if I offered a web event, I want to see mine, right? Or I want to see my series. You can filter, and so you can just be looking at your feedback. And so our best organizers look at this feedback, and it doesn't just have the quantitative stuff that you're seeing here, which is, you know, what's the net promoter score? How many attendees did you have? How many video views did you have? How many hours did they watch the video? It's not just that stuff. It is also those, and where I think the real nuggets are, and that is with those open text comments, right? So that's where you're going to see, like, what could we do better? And you're going to see those comments. And you're going to be able to say, oh my gosh, they didn't like this, they didn't like that, or they really love this. And it also has what topics, other topics would you like to see? What other presenters would you like to see? And that is where you can, and you know, it becomes, when you share this data and it's full transparency within DAU, everybody can see everybody's data. So we don't, as a program, crack down on anybody, but we share the data. As I said, I start every meeting, I start with the data. Let's look at our data. How are we doing? And so then, and we actually have one of our organizers who runs several series, and he shares what he does with this data after every event. He reads through all of the comments. He indicates, was this a positive comment or a negative comment, and goes through and looks at that. And then he does an analysis of it, and he feeds that back to his team within his region to say, hey guys, this is how we're doing. And you know, they start getting really proud of their scores. They start saying, hey, I had a net promoter score of 70 on this event. And they also are very, they look at the number of attendees they have. That seems to be something which isn't necessarily a measure of success. It can be, it depends on why you're having the event, right? If you have a target audience of a smaller number, then if you're meeting that smaller number, you're successful, right? But a lot of times they use that, the number of attendees as well. But we help them and we say, if you don't know how to get in and get your data, then we have sessions on here's how to find your data. Here's how you can go and read all of the comments. And I think, you know, we're not really prescriptive. It's very much, you know, kind of grassroots. And we're finding that people are looking at these things and seeing how they're doing. And we also encourage them to share it. You can filter it just to your business unit and just share that information with their deans. Here's how our region is doing as well. Does that answer your question, Carla?
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
To back up to your survey, you mentioned open-ended questions. So is your survey more than that line of boxes you showed us? I mean, is it a Kirkpatrick 1, 2, 3, or 4? Or
Yes, some of them are, and I don't know how many are at what level of Kirkpatrick. Like, for example, it has things like, will you be able to use what you learned on the job? Did you take away, I mean, I can't think of what they all are right now. I don't know what level Kirkpatrick they are. Definitely our end of course surveys are very oriented to Kirkpatrick, the Kirkpatrick levels. But I wouldn't, I need
sounds
to
like a 3. I
Yeah.
mean, number 1 is, did you like lunch and did your chair fit? You know, so
Yeah,
it's that sort of thing. So you just don't want to go there. I mean, I would
Right.
never use a 1 or a 2 Kirkpatrick. I always use 3. And actually the Kirkpatricks have pretty much said that too. So
yeah. I
yeah,
think we're at a 3 with, you know, will you be able to apply this on the job type of
yeah,
question?
because that ties also into adult education. I mean, the biggest thing in adult education is, yes, I can learn it, but can you apply it and how long can you apply it? So
Right,
the beginning curve starts kicking in. How long can you apply it?
right.
So
Which is what's nice about these recurring events, right? That you can kind of stay fresh if you're following along with a series that's once a month.
Do you also record everything so that if you can't attend that particular meeting, you're able to review it?
Yes.
And you include that?
And not 100%, because sometimes people are like, we don't want to record this. We want to have a sense of that people can feel free to comment and say things and have that anonymity, let's say. But I'd say 90% of them are recorded and you can go back. That's why we keep the web pages up. So you can go back, and if you have a series, you could see the video from every single one of the previous events within that series.
Yeah, so it builds on itself. Plus,
It does.
it's so much more convenient, and it is much better for a refresher, particularly if you're able. Do you provide transcripts?
No, other than the certificate of attendance, we don't.
Okay. I mean, it's getting to the point where it's so easy for AI to do transcripts of it.
Oh,
And so
transcripts of the, yes, I was thinking
Okay.
like a
Misinterpret,
college
sorry.
transcript.
Transcript of the event.
Yes, you can do that within our media server that we use. Kaltura is the name of it. You can read the transcript as well.
Because so many times it's better to be able to do that. Go ahead.
There's just a couple of things there I wanted to touch on real quick, and then there are a couple of questions in the chat that I want to make sure Brenda has a chance. I think I see three there, has a chance to get to. But one of the things that I wanted to speak to you about, Brenda brought up, we don't record everything. DAU has a very long-standing value that we refer to as non-attribution. And so we invented Las Vegas before Vegas invented Las Vegas, because if you set it in a DAU classroom, it stayed in a DAU classroom. That's one of the challenges of this kind of technology, that for all the affordances that we want to take advantage of, we also want to sustain the appropriate freedom of critical thinking and psychological safety, that people can explore ideas in a learning context and not have those things leak out into a different environment and be recasted in a way that's not useful and not good. And so that again is part of the challenge that the producers and everyone comes up against at DAU, because the web crawlers and the AI can be there even if we don't know. And as she brought up with Kaltura, the things where we do have, we're going to go ahead and record. Kaltura has an automated transcription algorithm. And the early days of Kaltura was pretty bad. It learns as it goes. I would say it's probably about a 65% goodness right now. But that's the other thing that has to happen. If you really want the right content from that webinar to persist, you've got to have someone who spends the time to go back and look at the auto-generated transcript and correct it and fix it and fill in the blank. So that's an important piece of the labor, and I didn't want that to be lost in the discussion.
Definitely.
Yeah, but Brenda, did you Charles had a couple of questions.
Yeah.
And
yeah, so I saw
one.
Charles' question about organizer equal instructor presenter. Yes, our organizers are generally our teaching faculty. So there are subject matter experts, but they could also be an organizer of a panel, right? They could say, I have the idea, but I'm going to go and get some outside speakers to come in and be on our panel list. So sometimes they're not the speaker themselves, but they're the organizer of it. Sometimes they are one of the speakers. So it depends, but usually an organizer is a faculty member. They may or may not be the presenter. They may just be organizing the event. And do we have an organizer leaderboard view for us competitive types? You could, yes, you could get it to do this. I don't call it that, but if you wanted to see, you could get that visual in Click. How many of your courses have a summative assessment at the end of the course? So I'm going to phone a friend with Judith on that one.
Summative assessment, I will assume that you're asking about an actual end of course exam and not the end of course survey that's getting to transfer and job impact, Jolly. Can you clarify for me which type of assessment? Because everything has both. If it's an actual course that a student is registering for and completing and is going to show up on their transcript. And that was what Brenda was sharing earlier. Yes, if it is a DAU branded course, if it has our brand, if it has our 3 letters and now 4 numbers, although there's still some old stuff out there with 3 numbers, then it is required to conclude with a criterion referenced assessment. And I'm happy to follow up on that after this event on anything anyone's curious about.
All right. Well, thank you. I'm gonna go ahead and move along. We're getting close to the end of the hour here. But I wanted to share a few other things. So one of them is, I've mentioned this before, our outstanding communication team, who not only creates banners. So if I come up and say I have a new series, they will create a nice, very professional banner for us that we can use for our PowerPoint templates. And they also send out biweekly emails where they talk about all the upcoming events. So we have help getting the word out from that. The other thing they do in that right-hand side is a LinkedIn event. So it's created by DAU, has a LinkedIn account, and they can have events. And by creating the event, making it look professional, and they're controlling the, how it looks and everything. Now, if I'm a presenter or if I'm the organizer, I can grab this event and I can share it with my network on LinkedIn. So we encourage our team, our comms team helps us with all these things. And I'm not a great LinkedIn guru either, but they give us, here are the tips. And Brenda, here's how you can do it. You can grab it here. We've already got it made for you. And then you can just share it with your network. And so we try and get the word out that way as well. And they are fantastic.
Hmm.
And so
I'm laughing at that because at Zoom, each employee was told to use LinkedIn and we were almost on a quota. We had to make posts of what the company was doing X number of times per day, per week. And if we didn't do that, we got the old slap on the wrist.
Wow. I am surprised. I've talked about that. I think it would be a great idea to have like social media champions that can kind of help, because it's not really, I'd say, we're all maybe in about the same generation. It's really not as natural to us as it is to some of the younger generations as well. But to have people that we could go to say, hey, how do you do this? Right?
Yeah,
Because,
yes.
and it's hard.
Yeah.
Okay, we have talked about how we run the program. And now I have a few slides, and I'm going to actually skip the next one because I'm going to talk about some of the best practices that we recommend for an individual event. And I would love it if Russ or Carla have other things they want to add, because they have a lot of experience with this. So I was going to ask you guys to give me some feedback, but since we're towards the end here, I'm just going to jump right in. And one of them is, so this is what we found, and I'd love to hear you guys' feedback on this as well, that choosing the right topic is so important. And it's really going back to why so many of our organizers read that feedback, because they want to make sure that they're giving the users what they want. So they go and look at that. What other topics would you want to see? What other presenters? And a lot depends on, as I said, what your goal is and what your measures are. And, do you want the most people to attend? Or are you trying to hit a target audience? That you really need to choose your topic appropriately to what your goal is. And in addition, the slides also need to be engaging. And I found that many times people, and maybe it's government, maybe it's DOD, they want to put every single word on the slide, and it's so dense that the audience is trying to read paragraphs of information while at the same time listening to the speaker, right? And I think that's a battle that we fight a lot, certainly within government, that they really we want to give you all the information. We want to give you the exact words. We want it to be perfect. And I think that really doesn't suit well in this type of a venue. Along with that, you want engaging speakers, right? You want them to be passionate and knowledgeable. You want to make sure they aren't just reading the slides, that they're looking at the camera. They have a clear speaking voice. What are you gonna say, Russ?
You're making me think of my Navy days when an instructor would do nothing more than read an instructor guide, and 20 or 30 students are sitting there. Give me a book. I don't,
Yeah.
I greatly dislike those kind of instructors, and
Yeah.
sometimes I just wanted to plug them into the electrical outlet
And let them out, huh?
and do something.
So I'm glad you guys agree, and it's hard because so many times we want to be exact, right? But to show that two things, right? The content on the slide needs to be engaging, but the way that the speaker interacts has to be engaging as well. And you also want the audience, when they can, to feel a part of it. So interactions, whether it's Q&A, whether it's polls, so they don't feel like they just could have just, watched a video, right? They were able to get something and interact in some way.
Brenda, I just have to take a second to tell you this, and I know we're 1 minute after the hour. There was a lady in years past. Her name was Dr. Judith Worley, and she got her PhD from Old Dominion University in Norfolk, Virginia. And she was a great distance virtual education advocate. And she once said, if you have bad instructional design, a bad speaker, you can deliver that bad instruction to more students quicker with virtual learning. And that always stuck with me. So, that's always something you need a professor, a teacher, an instructor needs to understand that they're teaching to a virtual environment. And this is not the traditional classroom. And so things are different.
Yes. And that's the same with a webinar is different than a classroom as well, right? All of them have their own little nuances that make it a little bit different. Effective outreach strategies. As I mentioned before, communication is so important for the successful event, ensuring you get the word out. Most of our events are open to the public. So I think many of our organizers consider, measure of success is their attendance size. So they look at that a lot. And, we also try to do complementary marketing, right? So during this event, just exactly like you guys did at the beginning, Carla went over, here are the upcoming events, right? So we do that same thing. We talk about the upcoming events. If we send something up afterwards, we say, hey, thank you for attending, but don't miss these next ones. So really any way that we can use multiple channels to reach our audience and do that. And some of our folks blog. So to say, hey, mention it in your blog. We talked about before social media. And I think I only have one or a couple slides left. So let's get through those. And then the other one is really making sure that you're taking care of your pre-production tasks as well as your post-production. These are so important. The tech check is important because, as I said, we're teams, but a lot of times our other speakers might be coming from another DoD organization like the Army or the Navy, and they have their instance of teams. Sometimes they don't talk together very well. Not only that, sometimes we have someone from the Pentagon. They might not have their camera enabled. So really just going through those things, and you don't think about it until you're actually in the environment. And then I will share a best practice that some of our very best organizers do. They do a complete dry run for both content and presentation. Now, I don't know that you need to do that all the time, but if you have maybe a very high visibility event, you're going to have very senior people attending or participating, it's good that you can really polish it and make it just really does a lot. And is what they do is they do the full presentation with maybe 3 to 5 people in the audience, people who are there to critique it. And they critique not only the content that they're seeing on the slides to really clean it up and make it crisp, but they also critique the presenter themselves and say, Brenda, you were looking off to the side instead of looking at the audience. Or have you ever seen that one where it's like this and it's just you're looking at the audience, the head of the person. So
no, never have.
I don't believe that, Russ. With your experience, I definitely don't believe that. So, those kind of things, both the presentation as well as the content itself can really make a presentation crisp and a delivery crisp. Open communication, a lot of collaboration, and then post-production, making sure all those follow-up tasks, you might be creating a relationship with your audience. So maybe afterwards, you reach out to them afterwards and say, thank you for attending. Maybe here's your certificate of attendance. And, you know, we would welcome more feedback from you, and don't miss our next event on this topic on such and such a date. So there's a lot you can do there. And then bolded here also, review the survey results, right? That's where you get the real nuggets. And then my last slide here, it is a team sport. And we at DAU have a fantastic team. We have outstanding producers. We have passionate organizers. Our acquisition workforce, they're lifelong learners. They come back again and again. They want more. And we have great leadership support. At DAU, we just got a brand new president last week, I think. But our previous president, to give you an example, Mr. Jim Woolsey, he actually had a webinar series of his own. It was called On Acquisition, where he would bring in Pentagon officials and talk about what was going on an acquisition. So you can tell if your president has his own web event series, it's being supported from the top. So with that, that's it. I'm happy to take some questions. Carla and Russ, I don't know if you need to leave right away or if we have a little bit of time.
No, we can just stay on. I mean, we're pretty flexible, and we've still got
Okay.
some people who are listening. If there are any questions.
All right. Is there a limit on webinar attendees? So Jolly says, is there a limit on webinar attendees? This is always changing with teams as well. We have had over 1,000 attendees, and there are different types of Teams technology that you can use. You can use regular MS Teams, then you can use like Teams live event. And so which can go up to like 10,000. So there are different, depending on the technology that you use. We don't ever turn anybody away. And then there are also things where it can like flow over to a YouTube event if you have too many, but then they don't have the full capability of Q&A and everything. They're just in a receive mode. I don't know, Judith, did you see anything that any questions that I didn't get to?
I think you've covered everything that was brought up in the chat. There is a request earlier about a copy of the slides, and I know recording will be up on the FGDLA website. But Brenda, if someone would like the slides, just the PowerPoint pack, how would you like to share those?
I'm happy to share them. I don't know how to get them to the person.
Why don't you just send them to me, Brenda?
Okay.
And we can go from there. It's Carla Lane.
All right.
The famous.
I will send them to Carla. Yes. Okay. And so Carla, I think you have a final slide here. Ooh, wrong way.
There we go.
Back over to you.
Judith, thank you for being with us today. Brenda, thank you for such an excellent presentation. It was absolutely wonderful. And I was going along and checking off, am I doing this? Am I doing that? So yeah, we're doing most of what you're suggesting.
You are.
Thank you very much. We're good. We're good to go. So we also want to thank all of you, your participants today, for joining us. It's always great to see you. A lot of regulars out there. And again, I'd like to thank our sponsors, COSO Cloud, Zoom, Moodle, and the new Learning or Teach. I know I can say this right.
Learn to win.
Thank you, Russ. I knew you'd come through for me. We also hope to see you on December 4th for the FGDLA Awards. The awardees have been notified, and it's always such an exciting time for everyone. So I hope you all will join us for that. We thank you for being with us today, and that concludes the webinar. Good afternoon.